This is Nick. He had a bright future, a pretty girlfriend, and was living the best life. But everything changed when he got kicked out of his team and had to start all over again. So he decided to find a bunch of other people who didn't quite fit in, and together he would lead them to become the strongest adventure team in the whole world. The story starts with Nick's life turning completely upside down. He got kicked out of his team, called the Masters of War, by a man named Argus, who Nick looked up to like a dad. And if that wasn't bad enough, his girlfriend, who wasn't really a good one, also left him on that very same day. The poor guy sat on a fountain in the rain, getting completely wet and too sad to even notice. He remembered the big fight with Argus. Nick was mad because some guy named Garoso ran off with all their hard-earned money just to try and impress a random girl. But Argus twisted it around and called Nick selfish, saying he wasn't good enough to be an adventurer. He reminded Nick how he took him in when Nick was just a kid, and then told him to go find somewhere else where he really belonged. Just when Nick felt like he was about to fall apart, a girl with blue hair showed up, holding an umbrella. She said he looked like a lost dog and casually handed him a ticket to her Idol concert. Nick stared at her and said she didn't look like any idol he knew, then asked why she was even there. The girl said she was just starting out and that making people happy was part of her job and what she loved to do. She gave him her umbrella and zipped off, asking him to show up at her concert. Nick didn't really want to go, but he still ended up at the show of that girl named Agate. And before he knew it, he became a super duper fan, spending all his saved money on every little toy and poster he could get. Wanting to earn more money for his new fan life, the guy showed up at the adventurer's office and started looking for new people to build a fresh team. There, Nick saw a guy and tried to go talk to him, but the moment he made a move, the guy pretended not to notice and Nick ended up not talking to a single person. After wasting all that time, he sadly walked to a tavern and ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, just to avoid starving. He looked around and saw everyone laughing and wondered if he'd ever get to laugh like that again. That's when 3 adventurers walked in and sat at his table. He thought they might be a team, but since none of them even bothered to speak, he figured out they were all alone, just like him. One of those adventurers was a strong yet fancy magic user. From her shiny crystal stick and flashy clothes, Nick figured she must be some rich lady. After staring at her for a bit, his eyes moved to a cleric who looked like he was already kicked out of his church because he was drunk. Then he turned to the third one, which was a dragon-like girl. Nick tried to give her a friendly smile, but she just sat there with the same super serious face that didn't even move a tiny bit. Just then, their drinks arrived. Nick felt super sad and started thinking that anyone he became friends with would just end up hurting him anyway. He wondered if he'd ever be able to trust someone again. He drank the whole thing in one gulp and slammed the mug on the table. To his surprise, he heard the others do the exact same thing. They all yelled together, saying they couldn't trust anyone either. They froze and stared at each other in total surprise. The rich magic girl among them, named Tiana, started telling her story. One day, after doing a lightning spell, which in this world means mixing water and wind magic, her school teacher praised her. She got super excited and ran off to tell her boyfriend Alex about how good she was doing. There, she found him sitting with some random girl named Lynn. She sat beside him, too kind to even realize that her man was cheating on her, and happily shared how her teacher loved her lightning magic. But then she finally noticed the girl next to him and asked who she was. Out of nowhere, her boyfriend started saying she was mean to Lynn at school, and then he went on and on saying all she ever did was brag about her magic. He suddenly got super angry, yelling that he always felt small because of her. And right then and there, he broke off their promise to marry, dumping her on the spot and marrying Lynn right in front of her eyes. After Tiana's school ended, the poor heartbroken girl started looking for a job. But everywhere she went, people said no, telling her that a rich lady like her was way too soft for real work. After getting turned down by every place she tried, Tiana ended up at a racetrack and somehow won her first few bets, making a lot of money right away. She got super excited right away, but soon she lost everything and ended up with no money, barely able to pay her rent. She then tried finding a friend for adventuring, but anyone who saw her got scared by the tough and serious look on her face. She even tried forcing a smile, but nothing worked. With no luck left, she ended up in this tavern, sitting beside Nick. Nick then turned to the cleric guy whose name was Zen and asked about his story. Zen said he used to be a priest in some small ordinary city. There was this little girl named Meryl who used to help him gather plants for a bit of money. Things were normal until one day the girl suddenly fell in love with him and even held his hand, asking him to marry her. Zen gently said no, explaining he was a man of God and couldn't get married. But the moment he said no to the little girl's marriage idea, she burst into tears and ran off crying, calling him a meanie as she disappeared. A few days later, just as Zen was about to get a big promotion as a priest, the guards suddenly showed up looking for him. Meryl was standing behind them, looking like something terrible had happened to her. Zen rushed over to her, but the guard stopped him, holding him back. The girl said he did some serious bad things, and before he could explain himself, Zen was thrown into prison. He spent the next 3 months behind bars, and when he was finally let out, he was sent away from the town, with everyone calling him a bad person. After being kicked out, Zen found himself at an inn, where he stayed with a lady. There, he helped the lady feel better from her back pain. In return, she told him to visit the Labyrinth City and become an adventurer. Zen explained that this is how he ended up becoming a ladies' man, and eventually found himself sitting in this tavern. Listening to both of their stories, Nick argued that he couldn't believe a word they said and asked if they felt the same. Zen, however, bravely said he was going to beat the Demon King. Nick turned to the Draganian girl, whose name was Curran, and asked her to share her story as well. She simply yelled that something very important was stolen from her, and even worse, it was taken by the person who meant the most to her. Then Nick told his own sad story, explaining how a girl named Claudine dumped him and how he found out she had been using him all along. Suddenly, Nick woke up to find himself upside down, his face pressed against the floor. It became clear that all of them had been sleeping in the same room. He quickly got up, woke them all up, and told them to leave, only to realize that it wasn't his place. Tiana then calmly told him that he should be the one leaving, as it was her place. "Before you go," she said, "tell me one thing. Is this really okay? Can we make enough money to survive?" She thought about how each of them had something that kept them going, whether it was singers, food, playing games for money, or women. "I don't know about you," she said, "but I care about things that give my life meaning. So here's what I'm suggesting, why don't we form our own team?" Later that morning, all 4 of them, who felt a bit like losers, walked into the adventurer's office. They stared at a young front desk lady as if she owed them something. An old lady from the office showed up, scolding them for making the cute receptionist cry. She recognized Nick from the Masters of War, and started looking at their papers to sign up. She pointed at Curran and said that she was the famous survivor girl, who apparently came back alive after going into a tough maze all by herself. She added that staying alive was the most important thing for adventurers and asked about their team's name. Nick proudly said Survivor and smiled, saying that no matter what, they'll make sure to come back alive. The others also liked the name and shouted out their new team name. After they finished signing up, Nick made 3 rules for their new team. First, never mess with each other's hobbies. Second, always watch the money. And third, no matter what happens, they all have to come back alive. Instead of letting one person handle the cash, Nick suggested they all share the job of saving it. While explaining how they would do it, they ended up laughing and joking that Nick would be the worst at opening the money box anyway. That's when Zen looked at him and asked why he was being so worried about the money part. Nick then shared a bit of his past to explain. Zen added that Nick basically wanted them to trust and doubt each other at the same time, which Curran found a bit annoying. Still, they all talked about how much they wished they could trust someone again, but agreed to stay a little unsure for now, just for their own safety. The team headed over to the Sticky Aqueducts, which turned out to be one of the 3 mazes they were allowed to explore while still at their starting rank. Nick took the lead and explained that once they managed to clear 2 mazes, they would be promoted to F rank. He went on to mention that these specific mazes were basically like practice areas for new people to get the hang of this whole adventuring job. As Nick kept giving his lesson, he suddenly stepped on something slimy, but luckily for him, it didn't end up being a trap. That's when he showed them the very first monster for the Survivor team, which just happened to be a small harmless-looking slime, munching on weeds. Everyone couldn't help but point out how adorable the little thing was. But Nick explained that even though this squishy cutie didn't look threatening at all, it could actually turn into a giant problem that might start eating cows if it managed to sneak into a farm. He then showed them how to deal with the slime and completely surprised everyone when he casually took out its core. And that's all it took. He finished by telling them to make sure they collected all those shiny crystals since they were meant to be exchanged for money later on. On their way to the top, Zen teased Tiana by asking if joining the team was just a game for her, which made her protest as she complained to Nick that Zen was breaking the rule by messing with her business. Nick smiled and quietly wondered if forming this team might have actually been the right decision. Zen then tried to beat a slime and admitted it felt a bit wrong to take a creature's life. Everyone tried convincing him, and they all ended up talking about why monsters even attack humans, though no one really came to a clear answer. Nick reminded them to stay awake, and Tiana argued that the only change they'd seen in slime so far was that they'd gotten faster. She then bragged about how she once took out big ugly monsters called orcs and goblins, but right after that she tripped. Nick casually mentioned that the slimes here shoot sticky fluids and are about as slippery as a banana peel. The magic user got embarrassed after messing up and quickly cast Icicle Dance in her anger, but she missed and accidentally fired it at Curran, who barely managed to block it with her sword. Tiana asked if she was alright and said sorry, but Curran turned serious and told her to be careful, saying it might be her next time who ends up hitting Tiana by mistake. This incident put a little crack in their new friendship, and the two girls began to avoid each other. A while later, they reached the top floor of the maze where Nick once again reminded everyone to stay alert. That's when Zen spotted a massive slime monster, and Nick told them it was the maze's boss. Hearing that, the magic user suddenly ran at the monster, claiming she could take it down on her own, but only ended up creating a complete mess. The team ended up washing their clothes by the riverside after the mess. Nick explained how giant slimes react to strong magic by splashing gooey slime everywhere. He then told Zen that his place was at the back and he should rely on others to protect him. Nick removed his armor and showed all his strengths and weaknesses, even admitting he knew nothing about magic. When the others asked why he was telling them so much, he told them that if they understood each other better, it might help them build trust. He gave a small pep talk, trying to make them feel better and stay excited. Hearing this, Zen finally opened up and shared his own strengths and weaknesses too. Tiana stepped in front of Curran, bowed to say sorry, and then revealed her strengths as well. This gesture seemed to make the dragon girl feel a bit softer, and when Tiana sat down and started acting quiet, Curran let out a sneeze that shot a little spark towards her to start a fire and warm her up, though she jokingly claimed she was trying to roast her alive but missed. That little moment finally seemed to patch things up between the two. Next, our heroes made their way to the Goblin Forest, where Nick explained that these monsters are usually weak as long as no one ends up surrounded by a whole bunch. Just then, a goblin jumped out and attacked Zen out of nowhere, but luckily he managed to block the attack. Nick stepped in quickly and finished the creature off. After that, the survivors team went up against a whole bunch of goblins, most of which Nick took down by himself. But that's when Tiana showed off her detection skill. With her skill, Tiana pointed out that one of the monsters was holding way too much magic to be just a regular goblin. Nick told the team it was likely an ogre, which is like a bigger, evolved goblin. The survivors briefly thought about running away, but then agreed to move forward, thinking about both the reward and the people who could be in danger if they left the goblins and the ogre alone. They put together a plan that mainly used Nick and Curran, since magic didn't work very well on the big, evolved ogres. On their way, Curran and Tiana again brought up their trust problems and ended up agreeing to give each other another try. All of a sudden, Curran sensed a monster nearby and ran off after it, with the others quickly following behind. Zen cast a magic spell to make them stronger, while Tiana used her spells to clear the path ahead. As the battle got more exciting, the talking ogre ordered its little helpers to attack. Curran's legs started to tremble as she wanted to trust Tiana again, and Tiana felt the same. The two finally put their trust in each other, and the magic user cast her spell, which passed cleanly through Curran without harming her, clearing all the goblins in its path. Curran then ran ahead, and with her flaming sword unleashed a fire dragon strike that brought the giant ogre down. After the fight, Nick began collecting goblin horns to use as proof for payment and asked the others to help. While Curran placed a horn in her bag, she found a pendant that brought back some sad memories, leaving her quietly upset. Just then, Nick stumbled upon another ogre that he suspected was still changing into its full form. He struggled a bit during the fight, and after pulling out the horn, he lost his grip. The horn slipped from his hand and fell right onto Curran's pendant, cracking it. We see a memory Curran was lying still on the floor of a spooky dungeon, groaning in pain, until a nightmare-sized insect crawled over her face and suddenly woke her up. She pulled out her pendant and stared at it, trying to figure out if it wasn't just a dream. Back when she was with her last team, Curran walked through the market. A sneaky merchant noticed how much she liked a pendant and tried to trick her. As she walked away, he yelled that dragon-like monsters like her should be careful, since she damaged his goods with her dirty paws, and threatened to call the knights on her if she didn't pay up. Curran began to worry, but a blonde man named Kalios appeared and reminded her not to wander away from him when she was shopping. The scummy merchant complained to Kalios about Curran's mistake, so the man grabbed the pendant from him and told her to go ahead and scratch it again, leaving both of them speechless. He made a bold bet that he'd pay double if she was actually guilty. Then he had Curran peel it like a potato, showing everyone the merchant's dirty trick. Without making a big deal, he pulled out the real pendant. Curran liked from his pocket, and after getting his money back, handed it to her before making a smooth and confident exit. You see, dragon people are a proud kind of half-human who are meant to help the hero and save the world. That's exactly why she spent every single day supporting Kalios' team. The next day, Curran was polishing her family's special dragon gem when Kalios asked if she was ready to head out and told her to leave her things behind, since no one would dare steal from them. With that, Curran followed the man she was proud to serve with all her heart on a mission where, as usual, the others said nice things to her, though it was Kalios's approval that brought her the most joy. Afterward, she offered to help with the hard, boring work, but Kalios told her to trust her team and save her strength for when it truly mattered. As they got close to the boss, the pot snake, he promised her he had her back, and Curran charged in without thinking. She slammed her shoulder into the pot, which made the serpent super angry and drew its full attention to her, making the rest of her team jump in. She asked Kalios why it was glowing like that, but he kept telling her to just trust them and keep its focus. She kept calling out to him until the serpent wrapped around her and made her unable to move with its poisonous breath, leaving her gasping for air and dropping like a sack of potatoes. The blonde guy and his team began gathering the valuable stuff and casually thanked their tough dragon girl for being the perfect bait for the famously deadly poison. The last thing she saw before blacking out was all of them walking away without a single glance back at her life. Later, she managed to walk back with a lot of effort, filled with anger and determined to get back the dragon gem her father gave her, since it was made from the best stuff and had grown stronger with her throughout her life. Filled with strong feelings, she finally collapsed just outside the inn, where the innkeeper told her that Kalios and his team claimed she died and then vanished. She asked what happened to her belongings, and he said Kalios promised to return everything to her family. Curran got a memory flash of his warm face telling her to trust him. She almost threw away the dirty gift he gave her, but then the sadness overwhelmed her, and her knees completely gave out. After that, she went through a time of searching for meaning in her life until one day, while starving, she saw an adventurer enter the tavern and quite literally blew the door open. She heard that he was Fifth, the famous solo eater. She quietly watched him enjoy the big meal with the kind of happiness someone shows while eating tacos, and it somehow made her feel good. So she ordered the same meal. Later, she found out the guy was a legendary solo hunter by day and loved gourmet food by night. So she decided to follow him around every day, thinking he couldn't see her at all. Fifth noticed what she was doing and started secretly giving her hints on what to buy without making a big deal about it. The next day, she returned the favor by saving his sword from a drunk guy at the tavern. So he gave her a simple thanks, but she thanked him from the bottom of her heart because he was the man who showed her what good food really tasted like and helped fill the huge empty space left in her once innocent soul with food. Still, Curran quickly figured out that eating all this great food cost money, which she didn't have any of. And that's the day she ended up meeting everyone at the adventurer's office. Back in the present, Nick searched all over for a pendant like Curran's and started thinking it was even more terrifying that she didn't get mad at him. That's when he suddenly heard Agate call out from behind, pleasantly surprised that he didn't look nearly as messy as before. Later, he chatted with her by a fountain, where Agate straight up told him it's pretty selfish to expect forgiveness just by replacing her pendant, but then added that it's fine since her own selfishness is what led her to meet him. She told Nick that maybe he should become Curran's gift himself, which gave him a very wrong idea. Sometime later, he found her in the market happily munching on some piping hot squid balls, and she tried to get him to try the super spicy dumplings topped with wriggling worms, which nearly sent him to the afterlife. But Nick was glad to see Curran smiling again. After that, he asked Curran if her pendant really meant a lot to her, but she told him not to worry about it too much and said she actually feels much happier now that it's gone. Later at the adventurer's office, the team's small gathering was interrupted by a cat girl who invited them to the back. There, an old lady gave them a job to explore the labyrinth of bonds and recover a legendary item hidden deep within. The old lady explained that their mission was to locate the Kizuna blade and even promised to pay them each time they tried, even if they failed. Shocked that she was offering thousands for what sounded like a beginner-level job, Nick got suspicious and insisted she lay out every detail she had and put it all in writing so she didn't try to pull something sneaky when it was time to pay up. With that settled, they charged through the maze like it was a casual adventure, hunting for the sword, while Nick still couldn't shake the thought of Curran's pendant. Zen was amazed by the maze's super advanced design, but Nick told them all to stop chatting and focus on spotting any hidden passages. Meanwhile, a mysterious voice watched their progress through hidden cameras, eager to see whether this mismatched team could actually survive until the very end. Moving down the stairs, Nick led the team as far as their map went until they arrived at a dead end, but he quickly noticed that the lamps were supposed to be red instead of green. So Nick rushed straight in, saying he likes to be super thorough, and also maybe because he smelled a hidden room full of money like Mr. Krabs. A door suddenly opened up, and they headed inside. They found a big dark room with tanks lined up, so Tiana asked if they seriously had to search the whole place, but Nick pointed out the obvious and headed straight toward the stand with the shining light. Tiana quickly stopped them and checked for any traps using her magic sight, and the space showed up suspiciously clear. But the moment they got near the stand, the light suddenly popped on, and a voice called out to the team and congratulated them on their brave journey. As the old man's voice coming from the sword kept saying silly things, Nick ignored it and carefully looked at the broken sword sitting there. Tiana thought it might be a magic sword, but Nick called it more trash than his favorite doll, which really made the talking sword mad. Nick told the old wobbly sword to stop being so dramatic and just tell them where the Sword of Bonds was. They were all shocked when the sword said it was exactly what they'd been looking for. Pretending to go along with the old-timer, Nick said he wouldn't throw him out of respect for his age, which made the sword curious why no one was picking it up. Once it figured out that none of them actually used a small sword, it started panicking about what they planned to do with its greatness. So Nick casually said they were obviously going to sell it for some sweet money. The sword immediately burst into tears, crying that it didn't want to be dumped again like the liars at the guild. When Tiana asked what the old man was even talking about, it revealed that the guild that made it, the first version of the sword Kizuna, sealed it in the maze afterwards so no one could ever get their hands on it, and it's been waiting for a worthy partner ever since. Nick told it he understood, but he also understood money more. Kizuna begged him to use its power for something good instead of selling it, while a machine nearby started rumbling loudly to life. Then they heard a massive boom, and Kizuna casually mentioned that the guardian monster was now officially on its way. Out of nowhere, a huge gooey monster burst in and forced them all to run for it. Tiana fired some sharp icicles straight into its ugly face, while Curran charged in head first to slice it clean in half. But Kizuna realized something's off, and before Nick can shout a warning, the creature reflected the icicles right back into Curran and dropped her to the floor. Nick rushed in to cover the others by attacking the monster and yelled at everyone to make a break for it while he kept its attention. He quickly realized that his attacks were doing absolutely nothing, as the sword explained it's made of tiny machines, and begged Nick to use its power because that's his only real shot at surviving. Out of desperation, Nick's glowing blade of light got larger, while the others struggled to get past the super strong door blocking their escape. As he glanced at each of them, the sword told Nick to imagine Curran in his mind and chant Union. But the light suddenly vanished, so he yelled at the useless thing for lying. He tried to chop off a piece of the monster anyway, only for the guardian to smack him out of existence and throw him into a hole in the ground like a golf ball. Seeing as their attacks didn't work, Tiana got the super smart idea to freeze it with ice magic and give Curran a chance to save Nick. The moment she leaped into the hole though, it broke out of the ice, leaving the two magic users to buy time. Meanwhile, inside the broken parts, Nick realized he'd fractured some ribs and considered giving up until he heard Curran call out to him. He told her to escape with the other two, while they could, which made her really mad. She said it was meaningless unless they all went home together. Nick got up and said sorry for breaking her pendant, even though she told him not to worry about it. Curran confessed that her team leader gave it to her, and even though she was super furious at his betrayal, she just couldn't bring herself to throw it away because she was hoping that he would someday come back in her life. But she's decided to move on and focus on the precious people with her now. She shocked him and said that she's glad that it's gone now, and lifted him up with her precious smile. Seeing their friendship grow stronger, Kizuna asked Nick to activate it one more time. Back on the surface, Tiana gave up and told Zen to stop wasting his spells on her and focus on saving Nick. As they said their last words, a blinding flash of light blasted out from behind the Guardian, which was shattered into tiny pieces by Nick and Curran's special team-up. Kizuna explained that the Guardian's core could move all over its body, making it almost impossible to hit correctly. So Nick gathered a huge amount of magic and put it into one massive sword strike that lit up the whole monster and completely destroyed its core, though the two also fell down and their special team-up ended. Meanwhile, at the adventurer's office, they showed off the sword to the old lady and the cat girl, who didn't look that impressed. She called it pretty boring, probably because it was more of an old toy than a sword. She admitted she'd pay them for the trouble they went through, which Nick approved of. But she then turned to the little white-haired small person staring at them from the back, who proudly introduced himself as Kizuna, the Sword of Bonds. Later, Kizuna laughed about how easily they tricked the guild lady, which made Nick question his whole thing about being fair and doing what's right. Kizuna cheekily said it's all to save a life, his life, though Zen was still confused about how it worked and worried that he chose a pretty obvious name for someone who wanted to stay hidden. Later in Tiana's room, Nick emptied out the bag of cash on the table, and everyone got excited thinking about what to spend their money on. Kizuna got a little confused about who he was supposed to go with, but Nick reminded him of the survivor's first rule that says messing with each other's fun time isn't allowed. He offered to take him to the Idol concert if he could stay quiet in sword form the whole time. But after seeing him already looking super bored, Tiana offered to take him to see a race on the Forbidden Grounds on the condition that he didn't complain about how she spent her money. The next day, Kizuna quietly admired the beauty of nature around him, looking very thoughtful. The survivors sitting nearby couldn't help but notice. Tiana casually pulled out a fire starter, catching Kizuna's eye as he immediately praised it with interest. She smiled and drifted into her memories, thinking about the time she spent with her teacher. At the same time, Nick, like a teacher, dug out a few old things to serve as their money box, and then brought out some bronze coins, telling everyone to guard them well. Apparently that tiny bit of money was all they had left, so the team agreed to take on jobs. The scene then goes into Tiana's past, back to the time when she graduated from magic school. She remembered the fire starter her teacher gave her as a goodbye gift. Along with it came the sad feeling of how she ended up ruining the career of the very professor she admired the most. He got dragged into her scandal and lost his chance at becoming a super wise person, which he had always dreamed of. Yet even after everything, he still looked at her with a smile. As their conversation went on, the professor suddenly burst into laughter for no clear reason, and that laughter only grew more intense until it turned scary. It became clear that he had lost his mind and turned into a laughing maniac. Tiana looked back on his condition and felt a deep sense of pity for him, wishing things could return to how they used to be. As she rose from her bed, she wondered if she might just wake up in her big fancy house again. Meanwhile, Curran woke up too, followed shortly by Zen. At the same time, Nick found himself trapped in a dream about Claudine, but it quickly turned into a nightmare, snapping him awake as he breathed heavily. He started to wonder if it was like talking in his mind, and if Kizuna had been talking in his sleep inside his dream. The team gathered around a table where Kizuna suddenly yelled that he had no past to return to, and that the time he's spending with the survivors is the best he's ever had. Later they headed off to an icy dungeon glistening with snow crystals, where they soon spotted a Rezatu ogre. While everyone was talking quietly through Mind Link, Kizuna ended up messing up the meaning of it as he charged straight at the monster, hoping to show off his skills. He actually did pretty well with the sword and even revealed a new move called Parallel, which let him create a copy of himself. After they managed to take down the ogre, Nick walked up to him saying he suddenly felt drained. Kizuna admitted it was his doing and he had used their energy and magic to use his skills. He added that he could create up to 5 copies, and all of these abilities were copied from a swordsman who used him once. Tiana called it straight up cheating, but Nick said he's just glad Kizuna is on their side. Kizuna then brought up using Union, again though Nick quickly said no, saying anything that leaves them collapsing right after a battle is too risky to use often. Meanwhile, all Curran can think of is yummy food, as they reach a food court. Nick finds himself thinking back to the dream he had last night. While they're sitting at the table, Curran starts tossing out some completely useless food advice, and when Nick teases her about how she's the one who eats through their money, she just throws the survivor's first rule right back at him and shuts him up. Just as Nick starts thinking about her again, he spots his old girlfriend Claudine sitting nearby, clearly using her charm on another poor kid who's already fallen for her act. She's crying about how she has to go back to her mother, who doesn't have much time left, using a sad story to wrap the kid around her finger. Right then, Nick shows up beside them and starts making fun of her with sharp little remarks that slowly show her faking it. The new victim turns to Claudine and asks who Nick is, and Claudine looks ready to explode. Nick then hands the boy his gift back, saying it's not even her birthday, blowing the whole thing wide open. The confused kid turns to Nick and asks if everything Claudine told him was just a lie. Later, while Nick is busy laying out a plan for a new cave maze they're supposed to check out, Claudine suddenly shows up and dumps a glass of juice straight on his head as revenge. But Nick stays completely calm and simply asks if her mother is doing well. She even brings along that big cat guy named Leon from earlier, who tries to scare Nick by warning him to treat Claudine better. Nick shoots back with a smirk, asking if the guy is also part of the Iron Kitties, which instantly makes Claudine super mad. She yelled that the name was Iron Tigers and not Kitties. As the argument got hotter, Leon told Nick to step outside so they could settle this with a fight. Once they reached a quiet place where no one could see them, Nick got ready to fight, but out of nowhere, the big cat guy suddenly said sorry. He thanked Nick for finally putting an end to Claudine's silly acts, and even said Nick could have her now. Leon admitted he's used her enough and that she's got tons of enemies chasing her down, just like Nick. Then he casually asks if Nick has also been tricking the new people in his team. Nick looks furious for a second, but suddenly bursts out laughing like a complete crazy person. And just when Leon starts thinking they're on the same wavelength, Nick punches him right on the chin and sends him crashing to the ground. The fight kicks off but ends almost immediately since the big cat guy doesn't stand a chance against our teacher Nick. Nick holds him down and explains that while he also wants money, tricking his friends for it would make the money useless. Right then, a new guy sneaks up from behind and lands a surprise wind attack on Nick, which catches him off guard. But before this guy can even finish bragging, our dragon girl drops in with a perfect surprise attack of her own. Just then, the guild lady Vilma arrives, and the big cat guy suddenly suggests a math-based bare-knuckle battle to settle things once and for all, asking the receptionist to be their referee. The next day, the guild lady explains there are 10 rounds in the math fight where the problems keep getting harder each time, and each round only ends when one side finishes their calculations, with the side scoring higher getting a free hit. Just as Curran starts worrying about how big a responsibility it sounds, everyone gets shocked when she ends up winning the draw, and she starts having a bit of a panic attack just from thinking about math, while Claudine's teasing makes her want to jump off a cliff. After that, she takes a practice test, and Zen congratulates her, saying she's got decent potential once she puts in some study. He hands her the sheet, which makes her really sad, but he cheers her up by saying that after her training, she'll be super smart in no time. On their way out, Kizuna offers to fight for them, but Zen thinks he's way too strong and insists it's a problem they need to handle on their own. So they spend the next few weeks carefully planning their strategy while Zen gathers some secret info from his lady friends. The night before the competition, Nick tells everyone there's no doubt Claudine's team will try something sneaky and reveals they've pulled this kind of trick before. Zen adds that his night ladies told him the Tigers team is way smarter than it seems and has some secret way of sharing info no one can find. Tiana guesses they're using thought gems, which are basically a cheaper version of Kizuna's mind link. Nick tells Curran she just needs to keep solving her problems until Tiana gives the signal. Meanwhile, it is revealed that Claudine barely avoided being sold into slavery by her own parents, and after that, she started using her pretty looks to trick people out of their money, feeling pretty satisfied with her sneaky life until Nick came along. Just thinking about him snaps her out of the nightmare, and she swears she's going to make him pay for turning her life upside down. On the day of the competition, Catgirl hands out the problem sheets to both girls, and Curran feels relieved that they're not hard, but Claudine teases her, saying even kids could do the first one easily. Meanwhile, Nick fights Tiger Man Leon and notices he's not fighting back, which makes him think the guy might just be buying time. Seeing Nick struggle, Curran starts to worry before focusing completely and finishing first. As she flashes a confident grin at Claudine, the Catgirl announces the score, revealing Claudine left her far behind with a nearly perfect score, which Zen expected since Curran had rushed to finish. Nick still jokes that little Catman's fluffy paws can't hurt his rock-hard abs, but his face quickly drops when Leon lands a dirty hit to his stomach. Still, it's not enough to knock him out, and Nick already figured they'd try to cheat with the math part since Curran's at a clear disadvantage and aim to win by just getting a lot of penalty hits. With that, Claudine takes another round, making Curran wince at Nick getting hurt because of her mistake. But the cool guy tells her she's not the one taking the hits. She cries out anyway, saying he's getting hurt only because of her tiny bird brain. Hearing that, Nick laughs and says he was ready to take dozens of hits back when she barely scored 20 before training. But now that he's seen her progress, he's got full hope in her. He calls her the smartest girl he knows, which makes Curran so happy she tells Claudine to take her trash talk straight to the garbage where she belongs. She focuses on the next round, fully concentrated and completely unfazed by Claudine's annoying chatter. Meanwhile, Tana keeps a close eye on Claudine, waiting to catch the moment the problems start getting tougher and Curran begins falling behind, while Claudine easily goes through the equations by cheating like a smug little troublemaker. Seeing Nick take another penalty hit, Tana scans the area with her magic sight, but spots no signs of foul play. After Nick takes another penalty hit, Tana gets everyone's attention with a sharp whack of her stick and tells the guild lady she doesn't have time to sit through a slow math match, suggesting they drop all the problems at once. The guild lady warns that doing so means whoever finishes first is basically guaranteed to win with 7 penalty punches in a row, but Nick just grins and tells her to bring it on. With that, the Catgirl hands all the sheets to Curran and the Snake Girl, and Tana keeps her eyes sharp as she waits for Claudine to finally show her cheating hand. Seeing Curran go full speed, Claudine gets overconfident and tells her guy hidden somewhere to bring out the calculator. As the two girls fiercely write with their pencils, Tana notices a magic signal in the distance and moves out with the team. Nick catches on and makes fun of Leon about his missing team member, which makes the Tiger Man worry they've figured out their big brain plan. In a panic, he yells at Claudine to stop, but that only makes her angrier and raises the guild lady's suspicion. Meanwhile, Claudine struggles to work with a smart guy in the tower, so Kizuna finally drops in with the rest of the party, greeting him from behind. Meanwhile, Claudine is at her limit and gets so frustrated she yells at the smart guy that he's taking too darn long. Just then, Tana shows up with the robed silly guy waving their thought gem for everyone to see. Guild lady asks the blonde girl if she's also got one, much to Tiana's anger. With that, the guards escort the oversized cat guy to jail, but Claudine starts talking quickly that she's struggled her whole life and no one has the right to blame her. Curran doesn't buy it, and Tiana states that everyone gets a chance to change. Later that night, they all head to the tavern to celebrate Curran's amazing math skills. While being thrown behind bars, the Tiger Man slips back into his memories, thinking about an adventurer team known as the Silver Tigers. The one leading that group was Beshot, someone who stood out with his sharp intelligence among the otherwise not-so-smart tiger people. And that guy happened to be his very own brother. Thanks to Beshot's brains, they managed to conquer the famous Mecha Steel Moonhell Labyrinth and steal the treasure hidden deep within it. But his reckless nature ends up costing him his life early on, leaving Leon with a heavy distrust towards humans. Right then, a guard steps into the tiger person's cell, draws his sword without warning, and holds it toward him while demanding to know the location of the treasures his team once stole, since not even the black market left a single trace of them. When the guard asks if he still has the treasures on him, Leon flashes a sly smirk and throws back a question of his own, wondering how he figured it out. Turns out there's one item Leon never dared to sell simply because it's way too dangerous to handle. With no other option left, he finally calls it forth, revealing the Sword of Evolution, a weapon that strangely looks a whole lot like Kizuna. Meanwhile, our survivors are out enjoying the huge pile of money they recently earned. Being the undisputed queen of gamblers, Tiana sits confidently at a casino table, fully focused on the game while keeping a sharp eye on everyone around her. At the same time, Nick shows up to tag along with Kizuna, who originally came just to grab some ice cream, but ends up completely ticked off when it gets sold right before his turn. Seeing that they're already here, Nick casually asks if Kizuna wants to try gambling too, but the sword replies that he can't due to the good behavior rules built into him. That's when Kizuna notices a man holding a set of cards and learns that these particular cards are laced with anti-magic to keep people from cheating. Just then, a big bad lion is seen approaching the casino trying to look for its prey. Back inside, Tiana calmly enjoys the sweet scent of her incoming victory, fully aware that no one in this room stands a chance against her. Just as she wins and gets ready to leave, the big bad lion from earlier storms into the casino, causing a whole mess and throwing everything into chaos. The guy starts looking around, and it quickly becomes obvious that he's here for our hero Nick and is holding on to some serious anger. As his thoughts focus on Nick, it's revealed that this monster is actually Leon, and his beastly transformation has something to do with the sword he summoned earlier. He remembers just how much he used to envy our guy. As the story goes back to the cell, the sword slices through Leon's restraints and asks if he's finally ready to unleash his destructive powers, wanting to know who he plans to destroy first. The sight of the blade and the deadly pressure it gives off is so intense that the guard nearby ends up leaking into his pants. Leon calmly tells the Sword of Destruction who his target is, and when he questions whether the weapon is still strong enough, it proudly snaps back that it's from 100 years ago, and that technology has only gotten worse since then. With no hesitation, Leon grabs the sword, yells out evolution, and transforms into this terrifying beast. As Leon keeps tearing the place apart, Tiana turns to Agate and asks who let the oversized cat into the casino. She starts to get nervous, realizing she handed over her weapon when she came in, and right then, the big cat steps in front of her, demanding to know where Nick is. Tiana casually asks who he even is, but freezes the moment she realizes it's actually Leon. Surprised at how massive he's gotten, she still refuses to give up Nick's location. Leon doesn't take it lightly and threatens to end her right there, warning her that his sense of smell has changed so much he can now sniff out lies. The lady calmly gets the oversized cat talking, purposely making him drop his guard before suddenly blasting him with her lightning flash and roasting him. She makes a run for it, but the big cat bounces back instantly and hurls a whole casino table in front of her, blocking her path. Tiana's eyes widen as she struggles to understand how the beast healed so fast. Thinking quickly, she turns to Agate's manager and tells him to protect her, pointing out that she's basically his ticket to a fortune. As the guy rushes to escort her out, Tiana turns back around and tells the raging beast how important it is to rely on your friends and actually care about others. Leon sniffs the air using his super evolved senses to catch even the tiniest lies, but finds nothing wrong in her words. The idea doesn't sit right with him, and he makes a rude sound, calling it pathetic while wondering if this is what hope actually smells like. Just as Tiana points out that holding her hostage won't help lure out Nick, the big cat leaps at her with a crushing attack only to get stopped by Nick himself, who refuses to let Tiana die on his watch. That's when the Sword of Evolution speaks up again, warning that another of its kind is nearby before realizing that it's actually its long-lost rival, the Sword of Bonds. Fired up by the chance to settle old scores, the Dark Sword unleashes its full power on Leon, transforming him into an even bigger and more monstrous version. The Sword of Bonds immediately sees how dangerous this is, recognizing that the dark weapon is now eating not just Leon's body, but also his mind. As the clash begins, Tiana calls out to our boy to use Union, and he swiftly takes the chance, managing to combine with her on the spot. From that combination emerges a stunningly beautiful, almost girl-like figure with long hair. Their combined form blasts out a freezing move called Ice Age, following it up with another strike, but Leon powers right through like it's nothing. Right then, a crack forms in his anger and Leon starts questioning why he's doing any of this, realizing there's no real goal as he just wanted to mess around with Nick for a bit. But the crazy sword has pushed him too far and now innocent people are getting hurt. The sword senses Leon beginning to calm down and desperately tries to push him back into madness, telling him to enjoy watching others suffer. But Leon doesn't fall for it this time. Even so, the Sword of Evolution coldly tells him it's already too late to turn back. Leon fights against the sword's control, trying to break free while it uses his worst memories against him. He shouts for help, and suddenly a holy light appears, followed by Nick and Tiana's majestic combined form, who launches anti-magic cards to break the sword's hold. With their help, Leon gets saved and again finds himself back in his cell, reflecting on his actions. Nick shows up for a visit, and Leon greets him with a smirk, joking if he's just here to check out a tiger in a zoo. Nick assures him that luckily no one at the casino died, though the place itself is now a complete wreck, which visibly puts Leon at ease before the guy leaves after a short but much needed chat. The following day, Nick is out for a run when he hears Agate's voice motivating him in his head. He thinks his fan levels are getting out of hand, but when she mentions he has to buy merchandise to reach the next level, he's disappointed by how much she wants money. The two take a break in the park, and Agate asks him if he's found a purpose in life now, confessing she'd feel bad if he became a waste of space like some of her fans. This leaves Nick speechless, and he thanks her for saving him from becoming a small criminal, saying she really became his idol that day. Agate goes deep in thought and suddenly gets sentimental, which Nick figures is the real reason she went on break. Back at her boyfriend Donnie's pub, we see Agate, whose real name is Belle Haggins, before she became an idol. She used to sing just for fun, until one day a producer showed up and hired her for his company. Her boyfriend tries to chase off the bald producer, but when he hears how much money it could make, he throws up his hands and becomes her manager. That night, she watches an idol shine like a diamond on stage, and it lights a fire in her heart to sing and have fans accept her. Before she knows it, she is in an idol trio named after Jules, and while she enjoys every moment of it, her life with Donnie starts to fall apart as he turns into a lazy gold digger, who only sees her as a walking bag of cash and refuses to admit he has a gambling problem. A few days later, Agate sits alone, thinking about how far Donnie's fallen from the dream he once shared with her. He used to talk about opening a bar that would make a famous chef proud. That's the day she sees Claudine completely ruin Nick's dignity. Leaving him so crushed, he walks into the rain and sits there like a lifeless, empty shell. So she decides to talk to him out of pity. A couple days later, Agate finds herself in a casino where Donnie burns his winnings. There she spots an angel who's more of a gambling demon than anything, effortlessly putting everyone at the table to shame. A short while later, the angel transforms into a magical being and slays a monster right in front of her eyes, leaving Agate completely amazed. Later, her producer makes Donnie sign a contract to settle all his debts with the condition that he has to forget Agate and never contact her again. Agate feels a heavy sadness and tells him she really likes him, but she's doing this because he stopped looking at her. She adds that he's bad for her now and she's tired of trying to fix him. Donnie cracks up, then says he's gonna hit it big and show her. With a self-satisfied grin, he walks out of her life for good. After that, Nick shows up at Agate's comeback concert, where she opens with a smile as cheerful as always and tells her fans about meeting an angel during the recent casino incident. Hearing her mention the knight who saved her life and left without even giving her name, Nick feels an uncanny familiarity. She shocks him further by revealing that her comeback song is about her new hero, the legendary Paladin, to share the hope she gained when she was feeling sad with her fans. After the concert, Agate pulls the mind link trick with Nick at the park again and keeps making fun of him for being hopelessly silly until he tells her to stop playing and just tell him whatever is actually stressing her out. She hesitates a little, but then lets it all pour out, and the two end up having a surprisingly wholesome heart-to-heart. The next day, Kizuna brings Zen a magazine that talks about a strange phantom known as the Stepping Man, a guy who apparently spends his nights kidnapping kids. Kizuna gets super excited, explaining how this guy can jump around in midair and how nobody has been able to catch him so far. Curran argues that they should probably stop him if he's really evil, but Nick jumps in saying the whole thing sounds fake, though Kizuna immediately starts arguing like a stubborn kid, insisting that the guy is totally real. That's when a green-haired lady named Olivia Taylor suddenly appears, thrilled to hear the name Stepping Man, and proudly reveals that she's the one who wrote the magazine article. Olivia explains that whenever something suspicious is going on in the city of Labyrinths, she always makes it her mission to dig deep and figure out who's behind it. Later that night, Zen, while being drunk, stumbles toward a narrow alley following a little girl, and right before his eyes, the child suddenly gets snatched and vanishes from sight. While walking with Nick, Kazuna suddenly comes to a halt and tells him that Zen is in danger, prompting the two to rush off in search of their friend, and finding Zen just in time as he stops the nearly invisible Stepping Man from kidnapping the girl. It turns out the Stepping Man is very much real, and Kazuna immediately engages him in a fight, though the culprit ends up escaping from the scene. Once they're out of trouble, Zen brings the little girl to a woman named Red who starts tending to her. Nick begins questioning the girl about who the man was and what she was doing out there. The girl responds that it really was the Stepping Man, and explains that her mother had been tracking him down before ending up in the hospital. The group then finds out that her name is Ryan, and Zen adds that they believe what she says. Suddenly, Ryan asks Zen to take her on as his student, clearly impressed by his bravery, but Zen responds that he's at least 15 years too young to be his pupil. She then eagerly asks what she should do to train until then, and Zen simply tells her to rest and never try anything dangerous like chasing after the Stepping Man again. Ryan quickly agrees and happily calls Zen her master. The next day, our survivors make their way to the Bounty Guild, hoping to dig up some information on the Stepping Man. But the cat lady at the counter refuses to hand out details on valuable bounties that easily and quickly recognizes Nick as a former member of the Masters of War. She hands them a simple bounty instead, assigning them a guy named Hale Hardy and promising a reward of a few 100,000 coins if they manage to catch him. As the receptionist calls out the name of their team, the other bounty hunters in the room start paying attention and immediately recognize them, with one of them mocking them for being clueless about how bounty hunting really works. Not one to let that slide, our gambling queen Tiana throws down a bet with the guy, offering him a turn. After getting their mission, the survivors head to the poor area known as Garbage Collection, hoping to track down their target there. The team approaches the gatekeeper and tries to squeeze some information out of him. Instead of being helpful, the guy rambles on about some guy named Greg, whose dog recently gave birth to 10 male pups. And just when the survivors are about to give up and walk away, realizing they're not getting anything useful from him, he suddenly warns them never to cross paths with someone named Nalgawa. On their way through the area, a group of thugs attempts to rob them, but the party takes them down with ease, and Nick gets the leader to spill that the man they're hunting can likely be found in the bedrooms. The party moves forward, passing through the poor areas and seeing firsthand how miserable the conditions are for the people living there. Kizuna quickly recognizes the area, and in no time they find their target. Hale tries to make a run for it, but they swiftly tie him up with ropes. Just then, a bald man appears, revealing himself to be Nalgawa, who claims Hale as his patient. He demands to know why they're taking his patient and gets angry. Nick calmly explains the situation, and after a brief back and forth, Nalgawa reluctantly lets them go, arguing that a sinner like him can't be forgiven for his sins. It is revealed that Nalgawa Lagzim is also an ex-priest, and is good enough to treat very contagious diseases, but for some unknown reasons, he's now stuck in the poor area. Kizuna tries to ask Nalgawa about the Stepping Man, but they don't get any useful information from him. The survivors head back to the guild to claim their bounty, and Tiana takes the opportunity to boast about easily winning the bet. She collects her winnings and heads straight to the counter, treating everyone in the guild to free drinks, winning their hearts. The next day, the survivors approach the receptionist, hoping to get some information on the Stepping Man. She tells them she doesn't know much, but mentions a suspicious person who's been seen talking to kids, pointing towards Olivia who's sitting with Ryan. The survivors grow wary of Olivia and decide to investigate further, wondering if she might be the culprit. Nick orders his team to block off all the exits, and just as he's about to question Olivia, asking where she was 2 nights ago and if she's been kidnapping kids, the lady jumps high into the air, creating a hole in the roof and making her escape. Later at the brothel, they talk things over until a surprise guest shows up. Zen immediately knows the grown-up blonde lady is Ada, and Nick confesses he's a fanboy for the legendary Team Grand Chef's famous swashbuckler. After quick introductions, the woman apologizes for her daughter Ryan's wild behavior, which Zen fully agrees with. That sends the kid into rage mode, thinking her master is a total coward. But he says he can't be her master since little girls horrify him, ever since one lied and got him jailed for half his life. He adds that now his body literally freezes up around young girls like her, and he forgets how to breathe. She asks how he protected her from the kidnappers, and Zen answers that any adult would save a kid in danger, but maybe it means he's actually healing. Ryan then drops the whole 15-year-old thing, and Ada refuses to marry her girl off to some sketchy priest. But Ryan says she definitely doesn't want marriage anyway, saying she's got high standards for a boyfriend and only wants Zen as her master. With that, things get serious and Ada advises the group to quit their pointless mission now that they've seen firsthand. Stepping Man is way out of their league. Nick steps up and tells her she has no right to stop them, so she fires back that he's a dumb kid with no muscles to speak of. Nick accepts that and says he still can't sit back when children are being kidnapped left and right. Ada makes it clear she's giving up to save her own skin and make sure Ryan doesn't end up without parents. So Nick asks if she'll train his team instead. Watching the team leader bow without hesitation wins her over, and she kicks off their training by serving a soup that brings out their magic potential, since using magic right is the only shot they've got at standing a chance against Stepping Man. She then trains Nick on the same enhancement magic Stepping Man uses, called Light Body, and tells him to skip across a tightrope 10 times. He shocks everyone by doing it super easily until the 9th jump sends him crashing knee first into the concrete. Later that night, Stepping Man gets his creepy hands on another young maiden, but Kizuna and Curran swoop in for the save. Zen is thrown off that he always strikes at the exact same time, and when Nick asks if he's Olivia, the guy's face glitches for a split second before he bolts onto a roof. Kizuna points out that no regular human could use this many spells and he's probably using a magic item. So Nick swings by an old friend and bribes the artifact specialist with food for information. Leon tells him about an artifact called the Illusion King's Jewel that hides the user's presence and explains its spell can be broken just by naming the user, something Nick already tried. But Leon says it only works if he's completely sure who it is. The next day, Nick is practically doing backflips during training, which reminds him of when he first started out as a kid. His old instructor had him build up physical skills before even touching magic, and told him his small build doesn't have to be his weakness. Back in the present, Nick pulls off some full Spider-Man moves and lands with peak aura, though he still can't fully control the light body spell. Zen then brings some good news that he's got a solid clue on Stepping Man, and with that, they head to the poor areas where there's nothing new other than a recently arrived child's body. As they move in to check the body, Kizuna warns everyone through Mind Link that they're being followed, and a robed figure suddenly ambushes Nick. He uses Light Body to dodge her monstrous punches, but that spell only confirms Olivia's suspicion that he's Stepping Man. She starts wrecking the rails like they're made of tissue paper and responds to Kizuna's special technique with her own shadow clones. Nick takes the chance and shouts at Olivia to just admit it, so the woman casually pulls down her hood and owns up. Olivia says she's honestly disappointed that he turned out to be Stepping Man and explains that while she proudly dresses up as him, she's not the actual kidnapper, and they just happen to share the rooftop jumping hobby. Putting that aside, they open the coffin in the mortuary together and don't notice anything strange about the body at first, but Olivia tells them to look closer, and sure enough the girl looks way too perfect, meaning their senses are being tricked by magic. Kizuna suggests they examine the body more carefully, and that's when they find a shard of the Illusion King's Jewel. As soon as Olivia crushes it, the girl's real features come into view. Back at the brothel, they identify her as the daughter of a runaway blacksmith's kid. Zen notes that since the body was dumped with the garbage, there's a good chance the culprit is still lurking in that area. As he promises they'll return the girl to her parents and get justice, Zen quietly admits he has a pretty solid idea who Stepping Man really is. The following night, Nick catches Stepping Man on a rooftop again. He mocks the faceless figure for missing his sneak attack, and the guy surprises him by complimenting his polished martial arts. Nick shifts to a serious tone and demands to know why he keeps using the same tactics when he knows they've been exposed. But Stepping Man answers by throwing out his chains. Nick charges in for close combat and says he's figured out the reason behind the kidnappings, especially near the garbage collection sites. Stepping Man doesn't buy it, but Nick stops his kick just inches from his face and pulls back. He points out how suspicious an overqualified doctor running research in the poor areas is, and calls out Nalgawa's name without hesitation. As the clouds part and moonlight hits his face, Nalgawa's veil fades while he congratulates Nick for discovering the truth. Nick says it all became obvious once they found out the kids had yellow demon sickness, and there's no way it would spread from the poor areas to city kids without some filthy bastard pulling strings. Then he grins that his doctor friend clued him in. He adds that Zen also figured out the plan to kidnap kids for use as research subjects in a crazed hunt for a cure. Since Nalgawa clearly isn't in the mood to talk, Nick charges in and drops a brutal combo that the old man reads like a book until Nick lands a kick so hard it breaks through the roof and sends them both crashing into the storehouse below. He smugly thanks the doctor for always taking the same path, and the rest of the team arrives ready to jump his wrinkled self. Zen uses the moment to ask why he stooped this low, and Nagawa says it's all for his daughter. But Zen already knows yellow demon sickness is a certain illness and says the girl caught it by accident from a patient sample while trying to follow in her father's footsteps, though no one paused before spreading nasty rumors. The old doctor breaks into a gut-wrenching rant about why his daughter had to die and collapses as he claims he's now willing to sacrifice as many children as it takes to find the cure she needed. This is where a video comes to an end. Subscribe for more anime recaps.